dare to listen, amazing things happen. I want to hear your story. Who are you? What do you dream of? What do you desire? What brings you joy? I'll never forget the moment that a dear friend asked me those questions and then patiently and compassionately listened. All too often, when I ask other people those questions, they don't know how to answer them, or perhaps they've forgotten. I know there have been times when I struggled to answer those for myself. We become disconnected or disintegrated from what we once knew. Instead of connecting with our past, we unconsciously create these false selves motivated by fear rather than faith. And here's what I know. Fear brings torment, but faith is the foundation. It's the building block for our hopes and dreams. My hope is that we can start a conversation that will cause a shift in our thinking that reminds each of us who we are at our highest, best, real selves. Then we can have faith for what we can accomplish together when we are all a bit more integrated, whole, living from a place of integrity. I think this may be what Thomas Merton called the true self. Quakers call it the inner teacher. It's an abiding selfhood, the soul or spirit of a person. The disconnect, disintegration is a divided life. That is the disconnect between who we are and what we do, our soul and our role. The divided life may look like this. We don't enjoy our work, and it causes a disconnect from those we are meant to serve. Or we stay in relationships that crushes our spirit and violates our values. We become people pleasers, or worse, we become arrogant and angry. We hide our true identities out of fear of criticism, fear of rejection. Without our being aware of it, we take on an imposter self. But I think learning to listen to others in life-giving ways first requires us to listen to ourselves, or relearn how to listen to ourselves. Listen to that still small voice you recognize as your own, affirming who you are and revealing the purpose and meaning in your life. So here are 5 questions. Who am I? What do I love? What do I believe? What's my gift? And how then shall I live? The first question is, who am I? If I'm not sure who I am way too vulnerable to projections that other people place on me. I unconsciously armor up, and I try to fit into what's expected of me, making life a struggle rather than a flow. It's like trying to wear a coat that's 3 sizes too small. You may squeeze yourself into it, but it distorts your thinking, causing you to live small. There was a period of my life when I was lost. I clearly, in hindsight, was in a state of disintegration for several years. There was a huge chasm between who I am and what my life looked like during that time. After an enjoyable teaching career, loving my work, loving my home, my friends, at age 39, I married who I thought was the love of my life. I loved my husband. I loved our home. My son was conceived right away, and life was good. The first 6 weeks were the happiest I had ever been. The 7th week began a downward spiral toward despair, a systematic unraveling of everything I believed. My faith, hope, and love were shattered by violence and betrayal. I spent the next several years trying to remember who I was. It was shame that disintegrated my sense of self. Shame for getting in this mess and shame for not knowing how to get out. My confidence was destroyed. And it was fear that kept me in that broken state. Well, we all have a story. Perhaps your challenge came in a different form than mine, but the outcome is probably somewhat similar. Varying degrees of disintegration. Disintegration can be caused by a toxic relationship, as in my case, or by a whole culture that inflicts limitations by dehumanizing another through anger, blame, shame, racism, sexism, ageism. But the most damaging of all is the inner critic, that voice that lies to us saying, I am not enough, I am somehow hopelessly flawed. When we allow that voice in, we think small and we live small. If you wear the restricting coat, the emotional armor, long enough, it disconnects you from your true self. The you that had noble dreams, that knew what you wanted and absolutely believed it was possible. The you that laughed easily and loved life. I struggled with questions. What was it about me that allowed this to happen? Where do I belong? What's my purpose? What am I supposed to do? Now, those are not inherently bad questions, but the answers were unattainable without the bedrock truth on which a life is built. Those questions are all about the doing rather than the being of life. The answers we seek may not be in those doing questions at all, but rather in true declarations of being. I am. I'm enough. I am worthy. There are lots of ways I'm not broken, but deeply and profoundly whole. You are. You are enough. You are worthy. You belong. And you are loved. Now, knowing what to do, knowing my purpose, it comes a little easier because it flows out of who I am. Let me back that up. I'm a teacher, and teachers are trained to prepare for what we teach and how to teach it, and if we go a little deeper, why we teach it. But as Parker Palmer says, we rarely ask the who question. Who is the teacher who teaches? So you fill in the blank. I am a leader, mom, dad, student. Whatever your role, to some degree you were trained for what you do, how to do it, why you do it. Ask the who question. Who is the leader who leads? Who is the student who learns? At times, the who, the me that was trying to teach was functioning out of ego and fear. And I can tell you, when we are driven by ego or fear, it rarely turns out well. I was overly sensitive to criticism. I thought I needed recognition and affirmation. I was struggling for worthiness, and it was exhausting. All of those are fear-based thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Fear of failure, fear of not being good enough. It manifested in self-doubt, and I'm ashamed to say it, sometimes it manifested in blaming others. That's what fear does. When I parented my son out of fear rather than love, the result was not good. Fear can look like judgment and feel like rejection to a child, to anybody for that matter. My son Daniel is now 20, and he's a fine, wonderful young man. He still catches me trying to make everything fix everything. And he gently reminds me that, Mom, what I really need from you is to listen. Ego and fear cause disconnection. And learning, leading, and parenting are all about connections. Whatever our work, when we try to operate out of intellect alone, we fall short. We fail to make those vital connections. We wear our busyness like a badge. Doing too much, too fast, does not allow time or presence for connection. So many people struggle and strain to tell their story with their whole heart. They may not even know their story anymore because they have become so disintegrated. But maybe they have not found safe spaces to tell their story. Maybe they are listening to fear rather than courage, rendering us victims rather than community builders, to isolate rather than connect, to lash out rather than embrace. Dr. King said many times, violence is the language of the unheard. When we have been heard, things begin to make sense. I deeply appreciate the times I have experienced sensitive, empathic, concentrated listening. And I really appreciate the times when I've been given the honor of listening to another and witness their reintegration, where they remember who they are, what they love, and what brings them joy. So what if we listen to that voice in all of us that loves justice and mercy? What if each of us functioned from a belief in our own worthiness? What if we really believed we could create a more civil society? When we ask the right questions, when we listen deeply to one another without judgment, when we take off the armor and we allow ourselves to be seen, when we identify the broken places in our hearts and invite healing and freedom, vulnerability and courage, then we can live wholeheartedly. Then we can walk the walk that invites others to live wholeheartedly too. When we respect the wisdom and experience in each other, a climate is created in which people are empowered, no longer victims of circumstance, but now becoming co-creators of a new reality. So let's create a culture where we invite everyone's voice to be heard. Let's invite courage, compassion, and connection into our classrooms, our organizations, our communities, in our families. Let's take the time to create safe spaces to listen and to speak our own truth. Life is good, and it is really good when we listen to who we are, what we love, recognize our gift to others, and allow our doing to flow out of our being, our more integrated, true selves. When we dare to listen, amazing things happen.